Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into a topic that's, well, pretty much in the DNA of what you do as military professionals. Urban warfare. How it's evolved and what those changes mean for, well, for how you approach the unique challenges of the modern urban battle space.
It's not just about understanding the battles of the past. It's about using that knowledge to kind of get a glimpse of what might be coming next. Because trust me, the urban battles you're studying, preparing for, they have deep roots. Cities have been fortified, fought over for, well, millennia. And there are definitely patterns there, adaptations that are just as relevant today as they ever were.
And that's exactly why we're here, right? To dig into those patterns, those lessons learned over centuries. And we're going way back for this one. I mean, we're talking the earliest city walls all the way to the kind of intense urban combat we see in the modern era. The goal is to give you, the listener, that clear, concise view of the history, the context, so you're better equipped for, well, whatever comes next, right?
Exactly. And I think, well, a good place to start is at the very beginning, with the very idea of a city and how in the ancient world, a city basically was its walls.
It's true. I mean, you look at those ancient cities, and the walls are the first thing that hit you. They're huge.
Yeah, and they were so much more than just physical barriers. They were really like the defining feature of a city. It was about defense, sure, keeping out raiders, but also about marking territory, showing everyone, this is ours, this is our sphere of influence.
It's like those walls were projecting power, stability,
hmm
even before you saw what was inside.
Definitely. And one of the most impressive examples of this, I think, is Ur in Mesopotamia around 2100 BCE. That wall, the main one, it was massive, like over a kilometer of mud brick. That's a serious undertaking.
It must have taken them, what, years to build something like that?
Years, resources, manpower. It shows you just how important this was to them. And it wasn't just a one-time thing either. They maintained that wall for centuries,
Hmm.
all the way until around 2000 BCE. That says something about their commitment to security, their ability to organize these massive projects, really their whole way of life.
And it wasn't just the outer wall, right? They also had the Itamen Nil, that inner fortified precinct. Like, they were really emphasizing what was important.
Right. That inner wall, it separated the temple district, the sacred space, from the rest of the city. It's a glimpse into their priorities, religion, the priesthood, all tied up with political power. Protection wasn't just about enemies. It was about protecting their beliefs, their very identity.
It's fascinating how even then they were thinking about defense in such a layered way.
Absolutely. And even earlier, in the 8th millennium BCE, we see Jericho already had stone walls and that, impressive watchtower.
That's what, like 10,000 years ago? It's hard to even grasp.
It really is. And the engineering there for that time period, it's sophisticated. That watchtower, it wasn't just about seeing the enemy coming. It was probably a central point for the community, maybe for gatherings or signaling.
So even then, defense was tied to the social fabric, the way people lived together.
Absolutely. And as time went on, things get even more complex. Take Uruk in Sumer, around the 4th millennium BCE. They started with simple wooden palisades, but they evolved, right? Moved to stone, mud brick, more substantial stuff.
They were learning, adapting. It wasn't a static thing.
Exactly, and that's the pattern, isn't it? A new threat emerges, the defenses change. Wooden palisades might work against some random raiders, but as societies grow, as warfare becomes more organized, you need more. You need stone, brick, towers, gates. The whole package. It's an arms race, really. And by the late Bronze Age, these complex systems were pretty much standard. I mean, look at Troy, those legendary walls. They weren't just a myth, they reflected a reality, a world where solid defenses meant survival.
And it's a pattern that continues as we move into the medieval period. You think of medieval Europe, you picture those classic walled cities, massive stone walls, towers, gatehouses, the whole 9 yards.
Right. And by that point, those walls weren't just about keeping people out. They were about status, wealth, independence. A city with strong walls, that was a city to be reckoned with.
It's like they were saying, we're here to stay, and good luck getting through these walls.
Exactly. But of course, the attackers, they were getting more sophisticated too. It was that constant back and forth like we talked about. Stronger walls meant better siege weapons.
And I guess that's where things like the inner keep, the citadel, come in. Like, they knew the outer walls might not hold forever.
Right. The citadel was the last stand, the strongest point in the city, usually on high ground, thick walls, tough to get into. And it wasn't just a military thing. It often housed the leaders, the important stuff. It was a symbol of power within the city itself.
And how are the attackers trying to crack these defenses? I mean, we've all heard about siege towers, battering rams.
Those were definitely part of the toolkit. Siege towers let you attack from above, try to get over the walls, while battering rams, well, they were all about brute force. Find a weak spot, hit it hard enough, and hopefully create a breach. But then you have the trebuchet. That was a real game changer. Late medieval period, this thing comes along and it can hurl huge stones enough to smash right through those stone walls.
That must have been terrifying to be on the receiving end of that.
It was. But the defenders weren't just sitting ducks, they adapted. Deeper moats, thicker walls, more towers to cover every angle. They even had these things called machicolations, basically openings in the floor of overhanging galleries, so they could drop things on the attackers below. Not a fun place to be.
It sounds like a really dynamic, constantly evolving system.
It was. And then, of course, we get gunpowder. 15th century, cannons show up and everything changes. Those high stone walls, suddenly they're more of a liability than an asset.
I guess a cannonball doesn't care how thick your wall is.
Exactly. It was a different kind of force. Siege engines, they were slow, mostly mechanical. Cannon were fast, explosive, and they could do a lot of damage in a hurry. And the fall of Constantinople in 1453, that was the wake-up call. Sultan Mehmed II, he uses these massive cannons, and those legendary Byzantine walls, they crumble.
1,000 years of history, and it's gunpowder that finally brings them down.
It was a turning point. The age of the high medieval wall, it was over. And that's when we see the star fortress emerge, the Tres Italienne. This new, low-angled earthen rampart design, it starts in Italy and spreads across Europe like wildfire.
So it's a direct response to the cannon threat. What made these star fortresses so effective?
Well, first, those thick, sloping ramparts, they were designed to absorb the impact of cannon fire. Instead of shattering against a flat wall, the cannonballs would often glance off or just bury themselves in the earth. And then the bastions, those triangular projections, they gave the defenders overlapping fields of fire. No more blind spots like with those round medieval towers. Now, you could hit attackers from multiple angles, and the attackers couldn't concentrate their fire on one spot.
It sounds almost scientific, like they were approaching defense in a whole new way.
That's exactly what it was. A more scientific, geometrically precise approach to military engineering. Cities all over Europe started adopting this design. Antwerp, Verona, Vienna, they all have these impressive star fortresses, a testament to this new era of defense.
Gunpowder changes the game, and the star fortress is the countermove. And then, of course, you have Vauban. He comes along in the late 17th century and takes the star fortress to a whole new level, doesn't he?
Vauban, he was a genius, Louis XIV's chief military engineer, and he was obsessed with fortifications. He didn't just improve the Star Fortress, he refined it, perfected it. His designs, they were all about precision, layers of defense, making every angle count. Moufbrisach, that's one of his masterpieces. You look at that and you see just how much thought went into every detail.
So what did he add to the mix? What made his designs stand out?
Well, he had these intricate systems of bastions, curtain walls, outer works like ravelins, hornworks, crownworks, all strategically placed to create these interlocking fields of fire. There was nowhere for an attacker to hide. And he was meticulous about the math, the angles, the ballistics. He took it to a whole other level of sophistication.
Well, he wasn't just about defense, right? He also revolutionized siege warfare. He had this whole system for attacking fortresses, a methodical approach using parallel trenches.
Right. He understood both sides of the equation, attack and defense. And with his trench system, he could minimize his own casualties while gradually getting his artillery closer to the enemy, where it could really do some damage.
So walk us through that trench system. How did it work?
Well, he'd start by digging this first trench, the first parallel, far enough away to be out of range of the enemy's guns. This was the safe zone, the assembly point. Then from there, they'd dig these zigzagging trenches, called saps, towards the fortress. And they'd keep digging, getting closer, until they could establish the second parallel, which was basically an artillery platform. Now they could really start pounding the walls.
And then the third parallel.
The third parallel, that was the final stage, dug right up close to the fortress. This was where they'd launch the final assault, once they'd created a breach in the walls.
It sounds so organized, so well planned.
That was Vauban. Methodical, precise, obsessed with minimizing risk. And his techniques, they became the standard all over Europe. He really did change the face of warfare.
And then, in the 18th and 19th centuries, we see this shift away from those comprehensive city fortifications. Cities were growing, exploding in size, and those old walls were starting to feel more like a cage than a shield.
Right. The Industrial Revolution, the rise of the modern city, it all happened so fast. And those old walls, they were expensive to maintain, they took up valuable space, and frankly, they were starting to get in the way of progress.
Like the city outgrew its armor.
Exactly. And we see this in cities like Vienna and Paris. In Vienna, they actually tore down the medieval walls, replaced them with the Ringstrasse as this grand boulevard that's still there today. It was all about opening up the city, making it modern, showing off their progress.
In Paris, they did something similar, right? Those wide boulevards, that was part of the whole modernization push.
Right, Haussmann's plan. They wanted to modernize Paris, make it flow better, and also, well, make it harder for people to build barricades during uprisings. It was about control, but also about adapting to a new era.
So instead of those continuous walls, the focus shifted to more specialized, detached forts located further out from the city center.
Exactly, it was a more strategic approach. You build forts along borders, coastlines, key points, but you give the city room to breathe. And this wasn't just a French or a Prussian thing, you see it all over Europe. Belgium, they built these impressive ring forts around Antwerp and Liège, concrete, bristling with guns.
By that point, artillery was so powerful that those old-style city walls were just too vulnerable, weren't they?
Exactly. And dangerous. You're trapped inside if they get a good hit. So the focus shifts to a more regional defense, a network of forts covering a wider area. It was a different kind of thinking, a more strategic approach to defense.
And then, as if things weren't complicated enough, we get the small arms revolution of the late 19th century. And suddenly, the urban environment becomes a defensive stronghold again, but in a whole new way.
This is a big one. We're talking about the leap from smoothbore muskets to rifled, breech-loading, magazine-fed rifles and eventually machine guns. The firepower of the individual soldier, it just explodes.
So now, instead of needing castle wall, a guy with a good rifle can turn a regular building into a fortress.
Exactly. And we see this early on in the Battle of Monterrey in 1846. Even before the really advanced stuff, the defenders are using buildings, rooftops, windows to create these interlocking fields of fire. The attackers, they're forced into this brutal street fighting, and it's a preview of what's to come.
So the tactics have to change, too. It's not just about charging at the enemy anymore.
Right. You need cover, coordination, new ways of thinking about urban spaces. And then World War II hits, and it all comes together in battles like Stalingrad.
Stalingrad, that was just brutal.
It was, and it showed the world just how tough urban combat could be. It wasn't about tanks or planes anymore. It was about infantry, fighting block by block, room by room. The defenders, they used the rubble, the destroyed buildings to their advantage. It neutralized a lot of the attackers' advantages, and it showed that a well-defended city could be almost impossible to take.
So that brings us to modern urban combat. And it sounds like the challenges have just gotten even more complex.
Modern urban combat is, well, it's a whole other beast. We're talking dense, multi-layered environments, civilian populations, interconnected infrastructure. It's a nightmare for any military planner. And battles like Stalingrad, Fallujah, they show us just how difficult it can be.
How so? What are some of the key takeaways from those battles?
Well, in Stalingrad, you see how even a ruined city can be a death trap for the attacker. Rubble provides cover, concealment, you can neutralize tanks, air power, all that. And in Fallujah, you see the challenges of fighting an asymmetric enemy in a densely populated urban environment. Booby traps, IEDs, tunnel networks, it's a whole different kind of warfare.
And it's not just about winning the tactical fight, right? There are all these other factors to consider.
Absolutely. You have to worry about civilians, collateral damage, maintaining legitimacy, and then there's the infrastructure. Power grids, water systems, communication networks, they're all critical, but they're also incredibly vulnerable.
So modern urban warfare is this incredibly complex, multifaceted thing. It's about adapting, about thinking three-dimensionally, about balancing military objectives with the needs of the civilian population.
It's about understanding that the urban environment itself is a weapon, and it can be used by both sides.
So as we wrap up here, we've gone from those ancient city walls to medieval castles, from the Gunpowder Revolution to the Star Fortress, from the shift away from urban fortifications to the return of the city as a defensive stronghold thanks to the Small Arms Revolution. And it all culminates in this incredibly complex picture of modern urban combat.
And knowing this history, this evolution, it's crucial for you as military professionals. It helps you understand the challenges you face, the lessons learned, the patterns that repeat themselves. Because even though technology changes, the fundamentals of urban warfare, they remain surprisingly consistent.
It's about understanding that a city is more than just buildings. It's a living, breathing organism, and when it becomes a battlefield, it changes the rules of the game. And on that note, here's something for you to consider. How will emerging technologies, things like AI, drones, cyber warfare, how will they shape the future of urban conflict? How will the continued growth of megacities, the increasing density of urban populations, how will that factor in? These are the questions you need to be thinking about, because the future of warfare is being written in the streets of our cities. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.